I am a physician and I am a mother and I'm doing the best job I can. I'm not going to be perfect, but I'm going to be good enough.
Welcome to Life Coaching for Women Physicians with Dr. Ali Novitsky. As physicians, we spend our lives helping others. This is the podcast that helps you find solutions to your problems. Well, hello, ladies. So excited to be here today because I have a very special guest. And the really neat thing that we're going to dive into today comes from a wealth of experience that this fabulous physician has and that she's able to share with us. So today we are talking all about voice of experience. And I have Dr. Susan Landers. She is the author of So Many Babies, and she is also a fierce physician who practiced many years as a neonatologist, and she is here to tell us all the things. So welcome to the show, Dr. Landers.
Oh, thank you so much. Please call me Susan.
Well, it's so great to have you here. And I know it's been a long time coming getting you on the show, but I am just so excited to dive into all the things. So can you give us a little story about you? Tell us kind of, what you did in your career, and then you wrote a fabulous book, and you tell us all about that.
Oh, thank you. I practiced neonatology essentially full-time for about 34 years, hardcore in the NICU, and I'm married to a physician husband, and together we raised 3 children, and they're all now young adults. So I've seen all the challenges, I made all the mistakes, the working mom issues. The first half of my career, I was in academic neonatology. I worked for 2 different medical schools. The second one was not a good fit. And I took a pivot in the middle of my career, I think it was 44, and I went to work as an HMO medical director, believe it or not. And I thought I was going to be a physician executive and went to all the meetings and got all the training, but I really didn't like being on the other side. And so we made a choice to leave academics and go into private practice. We ended up in Austin, Texas. I worked for Pediatrics Medical Group for another 22 years, met lots of neat people. And again, I pivoted. Instead of just practicing regular old wonderful neonatology, I started to say ho-hum. It's never ho-hum, but I got some expertise in breastfeeding medicine. I became a fellow of the Academy of Breastfeeding Medicine, started working for the AAP, all for free, I might add, and helped with the Mother's Milk Bank of Austin. So, I diverted again, and I did something new and different. Then I started doing some CQI work with the hospital, and that was really fun, working with obstetricians and allowing labor and delivery nurses to tell what's really going on. And we published some papers, and then I just sort of got burnt out. And I got burnt out at age 62, at the very end of my career. All my partners were sitting around moaning about having to cover a low-risk delivery center and how boring that would be to go take care of normal newborns. And I said, I'll do that. I'll go there. And I cut my hours back to 35 a week. And I went and took care of normal newborns and hugged on them and talked to new moms. And it was so wonderful. Oh my God. And over a 2-year period, I healed my burnout, but it did take me a long time. I guess I had let the NICU really kind of creep up on me, and my burnout really was pretty deeply embedded, but I got through it. And that's when I decided to write a book about the whole experience.
That's so amazing. I mean, seriously. And what I love what you're saying, which is, it speaks to my heart anyway, is the amount of pivots that you took during your career. But what I want to go back to quickly is that, obviously I work with a lot of physicians that are burned out. And what can you tell us? Because it sounds like yours came on towards the end of your career. But what about somebody, either new, like they're a new attending, somebody who is maybe in their mid-career? So what do you have to say to us?
Well, the pivot to work for an HMO was when I was in my 40s. And I actually had just recovered from postpartum depression after the birth of my third child at age 40. And I was so unhappy. And that might have been burnout too. But the way I handled it was get in therapy, get a different job. My husband and I really started working on our marriage. I mean, like date nights were mandatory. I had a standing babysitter every Thursday night. We joined an athletic club in the town. We both went and worked out. And I felt like I was just running all my issues out on the treadmill. I had always been a runner. And when we lived in Houston, it was easy to just strike out and run in the neighborhoods. But in Little Rock, we went to an athletic club, and it was one that allowed children to come too. So the whole family could be there. But I didn't get better in that mid-40 trauma until I changed jobs, cut back my hours, took less night call, started exercising, and worked on my marriage. You know, I had little kids. They ranged from 4 to 12. And I was chasing them around like all your other listeners are chasing their kids around. And that kept me active and busy and helped me be happier. But it was the change in job and the cutback of hours that really did the trick. And then my husband and I went through all the agony of, oh, he loved his job. It really was agony because I was miserable and he loved his job. And we were so out of sync. We had to struggle with how are we going to keep this marriage together? How are we going to balance our professional lives? And, you know, you had 3 kids in the background. So we actually made the really hard decision to leave academic medicine. He was a full professor. I was an associate professor. And there was no other way for us to get what we wanted to move to Austin. And that's what we did. In retrospect, I think sometimes you have to make really big changes to see the light, to kind of figure out what it is that your problem is.
Taking a chance, taking a risk. Tell me this, because this is speaking to a lot of people out there. I can tell you that right now. So I get it all the time. In fact, one of my first podcast episodes ever was, should I leave my job? And it was a physician who was also an academic clinician. And it was a really difficult decision. But tell me a little bit about like what mindset allowed you to overcome the obstacles, or maybe the question is kind of what were some of those obstacles that you had to overcome to actually make the decision to say, hey, we are leaving academics?
I had been promoted to associate professor, but it took longer than I thought. There were other women in my division, but they weren't friendly and they did not befriend me. I was friends with a critical care doctor and a pathologist and a shrink. And I thought it was really odd that the women in my own group were not friendly. So that was one problem. I couldn't stand my division chief, and there was nothing I could do about that. I mean, in academics, you really are in a hierarchical setting. And if you don't like your group, or if you don't like your division chief or department chair, you really have to go to the lab and hide, or just put your nose down and do all clinical medicine. And I guess I was just too stubborn to do that. I was just so unhappy and I wanted changes that weren't coming. That's why I took the HMO medical director job. In fact, the HMO was created for the medical school, and I was chosen to be medical director, and it was a real plum position. So that made me feel real good. We had a women's faculty group that met once a month, and the senior women through all the departments, the full professors, would come and talk to the assistant and associate professors and tell us how to get promoted, how to deal with a division chief we didn't like, how to get our grant writing help, how to do this, how to do that. And it was really wonderful on a medical school-wide basis, but I didn't feel it in my division. I was just the wrong fit for that division. I had some man friends that were my best friends, and I don't know, it was so hard to say, I just can't make this work. and I had to do something else. And therapy helped. I have to admit, professional therapy helped me be able to say, okay, this is not working for me. It's making me miserable. What else can I do? And that's a hard thing to do when you're in your 40s. You're supposed to be feeling good in your 40s, and sometimes you're not. It's really hard.
Yeah, I love that, because you're saying we should be feeling better. This should be easier. And then what you then went on to say is asking for help. Like, that's not easy. That's not easy. So I want you to talk about that, because I think that this is very empowering for us to hear. How do you, if you're having trouble asking for help, like, how do you do it? How do you start thinking about what is the help that I need? Because there's a bunch of help out there. And so it's like, okay, you mentioned cutting back hours. You mentioned going to this HMO medical director position. You mentioned doing all the things, but ultimately then asking for a babysitter to come in. That's a sense of asking help. But what did you believe so that became a priority for you? Because I think that that's what we have to get to. We have to believe that, asking for help is empowering. Asking for help is going to get us from point A to point B. So can you talk about how you were able to do that?
I tell you, it first occurred to me that I had control over my own situation. When I sat in the office of a psychiatrist, he was a very amiable older fellow, and I told him that I felt like I was the man on the Ed Sullivan show, spinning sticks and spinning plates on the sticks and running around the stage and keeping all the plates spinning on all the sticks. I don't know if you've ever seen that routine, but you run from stick to stick, and when the plate starts wobbling, you run over to another stick and you fix it. And I described myself as doing that. And he laughed. He laughed at me, and I said, "What is so funny?" And he said, "Why don't you just take down some of the plates?"
I love that.
And I went, oh my God, he's right. I can choose what plates I want to spin. Do I want my children, being a good mom? Do I want to save my marriage? Do I want to find a job that works for me, for both of us? Do I want to work less than 60 hours a week? I started making those decisions. I mean, I gave up a couple of papers that weren't finished. I abandoned the clinical project, and I said, it's not worth it. I can't do it all. And that guy, that shrewd psychiatrist, got me to examine every single plate. And I made a choice. Maybe we need to just kind of make a little list or create plates and fill them in and X out the ones we don't really need, because you can more than 6 or 8 plates. I was probably spinning 12 or 15 plates. You're probably spinning 10 plates.
I'm spinning quite a few. Okay, this is super good. Actually, I think you and I are very similar. One of the things, maybe it's our neonatologist brain, I don't know. But one of the things that I talk about a lot is making a huge, big to-do list, let's just say. And on that to-do list, we're going to start really getting clear on who can we delegate things to, what things can we trash, kind of what you're talking about, getting rid of some plates. And then the things that we still want, but that only we can do, those are the things that we have to figure out how will we prioritize. And so
Exactly.
Yes, I love this. This is so good. Okay. So tell me this then. What did you do? You said, okay, got to get rid of some plates. Tell me your next moves.
So I talked to the department chair, and my husband and I started working on our marriage, and I talked to other division chiefs as a reality check. I wanted to make sure I wasn't crazy, that my being a bad fit where I was actually real. And I had a couple of friends that had come from Houston to this new department, and they said, yeah, I can validate your feelings. And so I did a reality check, and I asked my best friends to suggest something that would be good for me. And then this HMO director position came up, and I thought, okay, great. I'll be a physician executive. I'll go work for a big healthcare company. And I enjoyed it the first year or two because it's really dreamy. You work 40 hours a week, you're off every weekend. It's a piece of cake. But, you're kind of working for the enemy, and it's a really hard thing to do with respect to national guidelines. And you're talking to physicians on the phone. You're explaining why you can't cover their patients, this or that. And I said, well, this isn't for me either. So you have to actually say to yourself, where do I fit in? What are my strengths and where can they be used? And that was hard because my husband was happy as a clam. He loved his job where we were. He had the nurse, the secretary, the assistant, and I just went, I didn't even have a decent secretary. And so everything with our marriage was slammed against a wall, and I was starting to get better. And I have to confess, I said something like, if we don't move, I'm moving by myself. Mm-hmm. I confess. I said, we got to fix our marriage and move somewhere else, or I'm going. Mm-hmm. And that was a really bad spot to be in, but I wasn't depressed when I said that. I was resolute.
Okay, you are bringing up so many good topics here today, because what you just described for all of us is that you knew what it took to set a boundary. And what that required was for you first to decide what it was that you needed. Because at the end of the day, and you've brought up this theme a lot, and I also want to hit on it, what we can control and what we can't control. And you went right after, what can I control? And then you said, and it's my duty to have my own back, and this is what I need. And you had a difficult conversation to set a boundary. And then what happened?
And he agreed that we would look for different jobs and move away, and look for something that was good for both of us. And I had no idea what it was. I had a friend, and a neonatologist friend in Austin. He said, well, we can use a part-timer. And I said, great. I was like, that'd be great. 40 hours a week, part-time, fine. And it turned out that we made the decision to move to Austin, and my husband actually created more good here in Austin. He's a pediatric specialty group that grew from 5 to 37 physicians in a 6-year period. They moved the tiny little Children's Hospital of Austin to a brand new facility, Dell Children's Medical Center. He changed all of that. He created a pediatric department in Austin, Texas, before we even had a med school here. And so it turned out that our move was really good for him too. And we didn't know that. We just were both willing to make a move and try something different. And here's one point. We wanted our children in public school. We were tired of paying 3 tuitions for private school. And that was a factor. And so I picked a neighborhood in Austin that had great public schools. And so in my mind, I was getting something better for everybody. And I'm not sure he saw that at the beginning, but eventually he did. And he's very proud of what he was able to do in Austin. I mean, we both had great careers in private practice. I have no regrets. I published 6 more papers as a private neo attending.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can still be academic even in private practice.
I love it. Thinking outside the box. I mean, that's what you did. That's what you do still, I'm sure. And I think that's why you have the stories to tell. And so I think the power of what you're creating right now is showing that you also didn't have several other people ahead of you to be probably mentors in what you were doing. This was probably a pathway you were paving on your own.
Well, my friend in critical care medicine, who became the department chair, said to me, yeah, it's going to be better for you to go do something else, you and your husband. Because, I mean, she knew that I was unhappy, and she knew that things were not going to change. And she backed the idea of losing both of us. I mean, he was a division chief. He was vice chair of the department. It was a big loss for her. But she was my friend, and she said, yeah, I guess it's really better the two of you go somewhere else.
Love it. That's amazing. So I think some of the times we sit here with our thoughts and we think that we're trapped. There's nowhere we can go. We're in it too deep. Other people own us. We don't have control. And I think the story you're telling is very opposite of that.
You do have control, but it's hard. You have to sit down with somebody, if not your spouse or your partner, some professional, and go through item by item what is most important to you. Children and your family, fine. You cannot work 80 hours a week. If it's your husband and your marriage, fine. You have to take care of your marriage. And if it's your friendships, go take care of your friendships. I probably abandoned being a good sister and aunt during that period of time, but I was a great mom, and I was a pretty good wife, and I was a really good friend to my best friends.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so interesting. I swear we might have the same brainwave, but you mentioned three things, and I always say that pick your top three, and those are the things you go after. Tell me about the balance of finding yourself in the position of momming the way you wanted to, being the mom that you wanted to.
Well, I have to confess, I struggled to feel like a good enough mom for 20 years. It took me a long, long time, and my dear husband telling me over and over again, you are a good enough mom, to feel that way, because we work so much and we miss so much. We want to be involved in everything they do, but we all love medicine and we love our jobs, and hopefully, and we love taking care of other people, but we also want to take care of our kids. And so we're in a position our whole careers to not be good enough because we're doing other things besides being a mom. And I think the voice of experience here is just accept that who you are is a working mom. And your children will love you whether you're there or not. And you are setting a role model for girls to do what they want to do, or be stay-at-home moms. That's fine too. One of my dearest sisters-in-law was a stay-at-home mom, and she used to always say, I just can't imagine doing what you do. And I would say, I can't imagine doing what you do. I'd go crazy. I'd rather be in the NICU than be at home with 4 boys going to softball games. And so the working mom thing is just this perpetual challenge to be in 2 places at once. It cannot be done. If we're lucky, we have a good nanny. If we're fortunate, we have an understanding spouse, and we work out how to be there for the most important things. I mean, I never missed a swim meet, although my daughter said, yeah, you did. And I never missed a school play. And what my son said, I think you did once. And I'm going, God, how do they remember these things? And I volunteered for field trips. The stay-at-home moms didn't volunteer for field trips. And so I think the working moms, especially physician moms, try so hard to be good enough. They need to stop and say to themselves, I am doing the best I can. I am a physician and I am a mother, and I'm doing the best job I can. I'm not going to be perfect, but I'm going to be good enough.
I love it. I love that so much. So the thought is, I'm doing the best that I can. I'm not perfect, but I'm doing enough. And I love that so much, because I think sometimes and this comes up quite a bit in my groups, is we feel guilty that we should want to be home more potentially, and that we're almost afraid to admit that we like to work.
Right. That's a big factor. We like being doctors. It's very fulfilling. We like solving problems. We're, investigative sleuths. We make diagnosis. We help people out. We have meaningful conversations at work. And we're part of a team. Man, being retired, the hardest thing about being retired is I don't have all my team members around me to yuck it up and to feel good after a resuscitation went well. I really miss that feeling. I miss that feeling of medical people, nurses, therapists, physicians working together to make something heal or better. And so medicine is really a wonderful profession. It's so wonderful. But what I think my life stands for is you cannot let medicine overtake your whole life. You have to dig out your role as a mother and a wife and a friend.
I love that so much. And I think it's redefining our roles. So even if somebody's sitting out there and they're thinking, oh gosh, it's too late. It's never too late. I mean, you just shared with us that you said it took 20 years before you started like diving into a lot of this. And I think that's really inspirational because it's never too late. We have the ability every single day to be able to reevaluate.
I think so too. And maybe we need to talk more about what a good enough mother is. You know, on Instagram and Facebook, everything I see is how to be a perfect mom. And, oh my God, you have to do this and you have to do that. We're really skilled at being physicians. And we're probably very skilled at being moms. And we just need to give ourselves more credit for what we know.
Yeah. One of the things I always say when I do a lot of workouts with my crew, and one of the things that I always say is, you showed up today and that's enough. If you decide to actually do the workout, great, that's extra. But you showed up to at least be here and listen, because I think a lot of the tone that you also kind of brought up a little bit, or a lot of the ideas, is that like it does require support and community to do what we do. And if you don't have a supportive community, you mentioned there were some colleagues where it wasn't really a great fit, and a lot of us experience that. It's difficult sometimes to get yourself in the right mind space to be able to do what you need to do to take care of yourself, your family, and all of your priorities.
Yeah, you really do need to have a friend or a colleague or both that you can talk honestly with, somebody in addition to your husband that you can bounce ideas off of. I had a pathologist friend who was an internist and then went into infectious disease and finally ended up in pathology. And I said, why that switch? And she said, I was just sick of talking to patients. And I went, oh, okay, well, pathology is a good thing. You don't have to talk to patients. And she and I would bounce things off each other. She was also a mom of two girls, and she was always so much better than me at taking the weekend off, taking long hikes, going on a weekend getaway trip, reading a book for 2.5 days straight. I said, Becky, how can you do all these things? She said, I just choose to do it. And my daughters know I'll be back later. And that wasn't me, but she helped me see that I had to do what felt good for me and my kids, and she was doing what was right for her and her family. And I mean, I think that's what each of us are out there doing. We're trying to be the best moms we can be. I know we're trying to be the best physicians we can be. I mean, we're straight A students, that's the way our brain works. We're built that way. We have to be good doctors. And we probably are good mothers, but we have to believe that we are.
I love it so much. You've had so many pearls here today. And I was hoping, is there one thing you can leave the audience with that you want to tell them all? You've shared so much, but if there's one other thing that you'd like to tell us to inspire us to keep going or to believe in ourselves more or whatever it is, what do you think that would be?
I think it would be take care of yourself. Find out what makes you feel really good about yourself. So if that's snuggling with a kid or hugging your husband or resuscitating a baby or making a diagnosis on rounds or teaching med students, I mean, whatever it is that makes you feel really good about yourself and really fulfilled, do that a lot.
I love it. Give yourself permission to do what fulfills you. Take care of yourself.
Yes. Take care of yourself in that way. Give yourself a pat on the back. Maybe what I'm saying is self-compassion.
Mm-hmm.
We're way too hard on ourselves as
Mm-hmm.
physician moms. We need to be easier on ourselves. We need to say, it's okay. Yeah, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah. I love this so much. I can't thank you enough for being here today, for sharing all your wisdom. Not all of it, but I mean, you shared a kind of like a nice little taste of your experience, which is so incredibly valuable. So I'm so thankful for your time. Again, thank you for all that you do and all that you've done and for leading the way for so many of us.
Oh, thanks. That's so sweet of you to say that. I appreciate it.
All right, my friends, until next time. So remember, take care of you, whatever that means. Find out what that looks like and just do it. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.